Thanks very much for that introduction, Helen. I will just share my screen. If you could just let me know when it's coming up, just so we know it's that it is working okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
I can.
good for you now. Thanks very much for coming along, everyone, and for wanting to learn a little bit more about building connections. As Helen mentioned, Building Connections is NSPCC's newest service, and we are a loneliness support service for young people. So what we're going to do is myself and my colleague Jess here today, just going to talk through a little bit about kind of how Building Connections started, kind of our vision, what we're looking to do, the work that we are already doing. And then at the end, kind of looking at, if there are young people that you feel could benefit from the service that you would like to refer in, what that referral process is. There's also like the chat function. So if you have got any questions at all, please do just pop those in the chat and we'll get to your questions at the end there. So our vision for Building Connections is for every young person to have a strong and stable support network around them. So this means young people feeling like they have someone that they can go to, that they can talk to about anything that is on their mind. And what Building Connections is there for is for those young people who don't feel like they have those kind of support, where there is a gap between the support and kind of connections that they want and the ones that they have. What Building Connections looks to do is match young people with a befriender, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and we'll work through our research practice model to support young people to try and overcome loneliness. But also manage your feelings of loneliness when they come up. Like, we're mindful that we're not going to eradicate all loneliness. So it is about managing those feelings when they do come up, with sources of support and resilience. We've just got a note there kind of about loneliness and poor mental health, how the two can feed into each other, kind of reinforcing each other in a kind of cycle. So one feeds into the other and vice versa. So our vision is to get in there and to support young people before that cycle really escalates to a point where young people feel like they can cope and manage. So a bit of the background of Building Connections. So Building Connections came off the back of research carried out by the University of Manchester, Durham University and Childline back in March 2020. Where we're looking at kind of what young people's experiences, understanding, feelings of loneliness were. We found that a lot of young people did experience loneliness and describe it in a similar way to adults did. So things like feeling unhappy, feeling not worthy, generally low and unloved, those kind of descriptive words there. They noted the impact it had, particularly on their sleep was a big one, and their mental health and other mental health conditions they may experience. There was a big pattern of loneliness coming up in transition periods. So particularly when things like peer relationships, networks change. Again, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but things like moving schools, things like moving areas, parental separation, those kind of factors really impacted on a young person's experience of loneliness. And in particular, it was noted that young people weren't able to cope with loneliness. So one of the questions that was asked was, do you feel equipped to deal with the feelings of loneliness, to manage loneliness when it does come up? And there were some really, quite staggering results from that survey. So at primary school age, up to age 11, 49% of voters said no, they couldn't deal with loneliness, so nearly half. Once that got to secondary school age, so up to 16, that rose to 65%. And by the time we're looking at that college age, so 16 to 18, 73%, so nearly 3/4 of voters saying they didn't feel equipped to deal with loneliness when it came up. Obviously, really high staggering numbers that came out of that, but also what it kind of identified was the need for that early intervention strategy. So getting in and supporting young people when that loneliness is first coming up, building those skills, the support network around them so they can manage it when it does come up, or if it does come up in later life. Also a note as well about young people, when they don't feel they're able to deal with loneliness, that is when we do potentially see things like risky and potentially dangerous coping strategies, which is something that Building Connections is really looking to prevent. So what is Building Connections? So as I mentioned, it came off the back of that kind of vote for school survey that was done all across young people, with young people all across England. And then Building Connections, after our pilot study in 2023, Building Connections was officially launched in October 2023. So we are a relatively new service. We've really been embedding and kind of getting our practice in, and we're really happy with how things are going so far with Building Connections and the level of young people that we are reaching, the impact that we are seeing there. At present, we've got a large range of volunteers who have come and supported our young people, and we're looking to grow and develop the service more, which is now where we're reaching out to services, professionals, services like Health Watch across the country, where we feel Building Connections could benefit young people. So what is kind of the context around Build Connections? How does it work? So like I mentioned, we are that loneliness support service. We are an entirely online remote service. So how Building Connections works is it matches a young person with a befriender, and that young person and befriender will complete 11 sessions together. These are planned to be weekly. Sometimes that can change depending on what's going on in the young person's life, but roughly once a week the sessions will take place. And these take place at a time that suits the young person. We're really wanting to adapt to the needs of that young person. So a young person goes in, puts their availability in, and that can be anything between 8 AM and 8 PM, Monday to Friday, which also means they can choose where they want the sessions to take place as well. So for some young people, this is in school, that might be their safe space. For some young people, it's not. It might be at home, or it might be a youth club, or somewhere where they feel comfortable taking part in these sessions remotely. What we're looking to do is build tools, develop resilience and coping strategies, and help find a way through loneliness. So I've used the word befriender a lot, so I just want to clarify a little bit what our befrienders are there. As I mentioned, they are our adult volunteers who come on board and support the young people at Building Connections. They go through a rigorous onboarding, safeguarding and training process with coordinators like myself and Jess. And they are constantly supported as well by coordinators throughout their conversations and work with young people. We've got a little quote from one of our befrienders there that took part right at the start of Building Connections, just about what they are looking to do with our young people. I mentioned that we do go through our practice model, our 11 sessions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hand over to Jess to talk about that a little bit for you.
Lovely, thank you, Ellen. So on the slide here, you can see an overview of the offer that we are providing to children and young people. So they will all complete 11 online sessions, which covers the 7-step programme that you can see here, with each session lasting between 40 to 60 minutes long. And we do find most of the time it is that full hour there. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of each stage. But like mentioned right at the start, you will get sent this presentation and some links to our website, which has a little bit more detail there about that offer. So right at the start, we've got the introductions, and this is spread over the first 2 sessions. And this continues throughout with that relationship building. That's really important, that the young person feels able to trust and feel like it's a safe place to open up to the befriender. So it's a really crucial part that that relationship is really established right at the start. In the introductions, it's all about getting to know the young person and really establishing the expectations of what the service offers and making those boundaries really clear. We then move on to the I am stage, and this is all about exploring the young person's world. So looking at their current thoughts, their feelings towards loneliness, any experiences they've had, looking at their values, their strengths, vulnerabilities, and really just how they view themselves. Moving on from that, we then move to I have, and this is looking at what the young person has available to them already, if anything. Some young people do have some supportive people in their life, but they might not be able to identify them. It might just be thinking about strategies they might have used in the past and bringing them into the present moment and speaking about how that's worked. And we really help them identify the things that they might currently have and really highlight that to the young person. We then move into I want and I deserve, and kind of as it says there, it's really what the young person feels that they deserve in their life. So it's what they want to see change that might make a really positive difference to their life, any hopes or goals that they might want to work towards. So some examples might be to make a new friend, to join a club, even something as simple as speaking out in class a little bit more, or building up that confidence, just to spend more time outside. Really small things that can really have that larger impact on those feelings of loneliness there. And it is down to the young person to really think about that for themselves. We're not there to kind of have that influence and to tell them what they should be doing. We really encourage young people to kind of create those goals themselves. We then move on to I can and I will, and this is where we work with the young person within the safety net of our service, so whilst they're with us, to really take those concrete steps towards those goals that they set with us. So we look at making a plan together and really thinking about the small steps they can create between each of our sessions, and then they can feed back to us in the following session how they got on, and we're really there to support them with that journey. We then move on to I have learned and I pledge to, and this step looks to support the young person in creating a plan for the next, say, 6 to 9 months after the service comes to an end. So it's really important we make it clear to the young person that we are there for them for those 11 sessions, and we'll give them those tools to help them. But we really want to build their resilience and confidence to be able to do that independently. As we know, loneliness isn't something that can just disappear full stop. It's something that can come back in different periods of our life when things might change within our situation. As Ellen mentioned, those transition periods, so it's really important we help the young person create that plan so they feel they've got a bit of a toolkit to support them when they do eventually leave our service. And then finally, we've got endings there, and this is a stage that we really like to keep nice and positive. So we focus on the progress that the young person's made, and we really celebrate that. And we really try and make this a positive session, just to emphasize that not all relationships ending is a bad thing. And it's really important that this has been a healthy befriender relationship with the young person, and that they can see how much they've grown throughout those 11 sessions for when it comes to the end. If we go on to the next slide, Ellen. We've just got some benefits, what we believe to be the benefits of our service. So we're there to provide that service to help young people who are experiencing or struggling with the impact of loneliness, and often that means poor relationships as well. I think I just want to highlight that part there where we're an early intervention, so hopefully we can prevent it escalating even more. As Ellen mentioned, young people often turn to quite risky and dangerous coping strategies when they get into that state. So we're there as that intervention to hopefully break that cycle of loneliness and poor mental health, and really give them that toolkit and that resilience and confidence to keep moving forwards. If we go on to the next slide. So when a referral is made to us, which Ellen will go on and talk a little bit more about that process, it's really important that we assess the young person to make sure we're the right service for them. When we say the word loneliness, it encompasses a wide range of different situations, scenarios and feelings as well. And we do find that young people bring a wide range of situations to the sessions, and this can evolve over the 11 weeks. A lot can happen in a young person's life over the span of 3 months. So we're ever assessing and making sure we check in with the young people. But on the slide here, there's just some examples of some things that we find a lot of young people bring to the sessions and the reasons why they are referred in. So we've got that transitional periods there, whether that's moving to a new school, moving areas, moving house. We do get a lot of young people as well who are struggling with school attendance and school refusers as well. Emotional health, that's a really big thing that can play into how we're feeling. So that those stress, the low self-esteem is quite a big one there, and just that social isolation, so young people who are kind of cutting themselves off from their peers around them. Friendship issues goes without saying. This is a thing that often impacts all children throughout primary school. So we've got young people as young as 8 accessing the service, and this can be an ongoing thing with friendship issues, whether it be maintaining those relationships with peers or identifying what is a good friend. So it's one thing that we do support young people with as well. We've got bullying there, and then as well sense of otherness. So that might be a young person who has kind of battling with their own identity, how they view themselves, whether this be their sexuality, their gender identity, race, religion, or a combination of all of these. That's another reason a young person might be referred. I wanted to draw your attention to that attachment concerns as well. It's really important that we have the confidence from the referrer or from an adult supporting that young person that they feel they'll be able to cope with the idea of endings. We are a service that is for 11 sessions, and then the relationship does need to come to an end. So we want to make sure a young person isn't going to be negatively impacted by our service, so that if that's a concern for that young person, then we might not be the appropriate service for them. So it's really important we check that as well. So moving on to the next slide, just a little bit more detail about how our service functions. So as we mentioned, we are a fully remote service, and befrienders and young people can access it through a website called Mentor City. On here, young people can tell us their availability. So anytime between 8 AM and 8 PM, Monday to Friday, they can let us know when's best for them to have their sessions. And our befrienders also do the same. And that's one of the bases on how they are matched. They are also able to access their sessions with their befriender on the platform Mentor City. They can only access the chat during the hour period that the session has been allocated to, so they're unable to message out of that hour slot for safeguarding purposes there. And we also have a range of resources for the young people to have a look at on there, links to the Childline website, resources that link to certain coping strategies and things like that that they can have a look at as well. And another really nice thing to note is that young people do have access to the Mentor City portal for up to a year after their 11 sessions have ended. So we spoke about creating that toolkit for them and helping them with those coping strategies. They can go on back to the session and read the transcripts and the chats they had with the befriender, just to remind themselves and to have a little bit of a refresh if they do feel like they need it. On to the next slide here, just a note about accessibility and technology here. So we aim as a service to make sure that it's accessible as possible for every young person. So it's really important that we get as much information about additional needs relating to that young person as possible, just to make sure that the service is fully accessible for them. And we have a wide range of young people accessing our service at the moment. And we do like to feel that we can meet the needs of the majority of most young people there. The one thing to note, though, that young people will need is just an email address. So that needs to be an email address they can access during the sessions, just for how our systems work. They need to type in a code that's sent to their email. And it's also how we communicate with them, just about session reminders and things like that. Young people can access the service through mobile phones, through a tablet, school computer, a laptop or a computer at home as well. So it can be accessed from, like Ellen said, from school, a home environment, or wherever the young person feels the safest. Moving on to the next slide, it goes without saying that safety and well-being of a child is of paramount importance to us here at the NSPCC. So I just wanted to highlight that as a service, we do work within the framework of the NSPCC procedure, what to do if you have concerns for a child. And if a safeguarding concern is identified, whether that be by a befriend during the sessions or a member of staff who is overseeing the service, we do have that responsibility there to take appropriate action to safeguard the young person. And if anyone wants to find out more information about that procedure, that can be found on the NSPCC website as well. I will hand back over to Ellen now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jess. I'm just going to talk a little bit now on kind of the process of how young people begin working with Building Connections. So there's a couple of steps in the process, and I'll give a little summary at the end. But like we've kind of mentioned, these slides will all be sent out, so don't feel like you need to take too many notes at this point. So the way our safeguarding policy works is that we do require parental or carer parent or carer consent, or those with parental responsibility. Consent to work with the service. So that's both working with the NSPCC and also for the personal information to be stored and passed on to the NSPCC for relevant purposes, working with Building Connections. The way this consent is sought is through a single online form. So if a professional is wanting to refer a young person in, they would just direct the parent or carer towards this form. And this is both the parent or carer and the young person that completes this form. It takes just a couple of minutes really to kind of identify what is going to go on for the young person and the parent or carer to read a little bit more, understand a little bit more about the service. We really want young people to buy into this and to want to be a part of this service and to want to be a part of building connections. And we do have things like we have adverts aimed at young people and some resources directly aimed at the young people, just so they can learn a little bit more about it, you know, what's going to happen before they do come on board for their sessions. But like I mentioned, the first step in the process is getting that consent from young people and parent or carer. Once we've got that consent in, we will contact the professional who is responsible. So that can be any professional working with a young person. You know, that can be medical professionals, social care, education like teachers, pastoral workers, youth workers, charity sector. The list is kind of endless there. Any professional working with a young person can fill in this request for service form. This form takes roughly around kind of 10 to 15 minutes. But like Jess mentioned earlier, we do ask that you just kind of include as much information as possible. And what that helps us to do is really target the service and kind of adapt it towards what those young person's needs are. Of course, things can come up in the sessions that might not be known by the professional, might not be known by anyone in their life, and we'll absolutely adapt to those needs as they come up. But what we're really asking for here is, you know, things, for example, like what are the loneliness indicators in this young person? Why are you referring this young person to service? What they're hoping to get out of the service? And also things like additional needs, communication difficulties, physical or learning difficulties or disabilities, things like that, where we would need to and we would very much want to adapt the service to that young person. So I'm just going to go kind of over that again as a brief overview, what the kind of step-by-step process is. So as we said, first is that requesting consent from parent or carers and the young person through that single online form. Once we've got that back, we'll contact the professional, which is where they submit their referral form. That's around 10 to 15 minutes. That'll come back to us, and then we will be reviewing suitability. So like Jess mentioned, just reviewing whether this is the right service for this young person at this time, and what kind of support we could provide that young person with. We will let you know within 7 working days whether a young person is suitable for service. And then it's once a young person's been accepted to service, it'll be then getting them logged on to Mentor City and putting in their availability. So they can put in whenever they, as we said, whenever they want to those sessions kind of to take place, and we'll be getting them matched up with a befriender ready to start their sessions. And it's worth noting that, you know, now as we are particularly in our really kind of early stages, you know, early stage, we're nearly at our first birthday, but we are seeing much shorter kind of waiting times there with young people being matched with befrienders and starting support. That's something we're really mindful of keeping as low as possible and getting in there. That's part of our early intervention strategy, to be able to work with young people at the right time before issues are escalating any further. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hand back to Jess just for our last little bit here, just to talk through a little bit about some of the kind of feedback and testimonials that we have had from both young people and professionals working alongside Building Connections.
Thank you, Ellen. So as we said, we're coming towards the end of the presentation today, but we'd just really like to highlight the experiences and feedback that some of the professionals who have referred young people in, and also the young people as they've approached the end of their 11 sessions. So I really agree. I want to highlight that first statement there about the online world often being a young person's world, and I think it's great that we're able to use that for a positive reason. They can access the support they need in a virtual environment that's a safe place for them at a time that works for them. Often we know the online world isn't always a positive place for a young person, but I think it's great that we've been able to create that space where they can log online and feel like they're able to connect with somebody there, and really demonstrate what a healthy, positive relationship can look like through a messaging system there as well. Also at the end there, just a little bit, Ellen mentioned about the capacity that we're working at the moment, and it's really great that we don't have those wait times for young people, and we are a service that young people can access relatively quickly, and hopefully we do stay that way, because it's really important that we are able to support young people as soon as we can. We do know that often services do have those long waiting times of potentially 10 to 12 weeks, like shown here on the screen. So we are a service that young people can access quite quickly. Moving on, we've got some quotes here that have been given by the young people who have completed their 11 sessions and have taken part in building connections. I just find them all very heartwarming, and I think it just shows that the feelings of loneliness can be very different for all different types of people. So that one there that says, sometimes I feel invisible in groups, but it was nice to know that I'm not completely invisible. That feeling that sometimes you can be in a room surrounded by people, but you can still be lonely, and it's not always the kind of the young people that you would expect to be experiencing those feelings. I know stereotypically you often think it's the young people that are more reserved and keeping themselves to themselves that might experience those feelings, but that just shows there that often those that are surrounded by the most people often feel the most isolated internally there. So it's really lovely that we've been able to support young people like that so far, and hopefully many more to come as well. So that brings us to the end of our presentation today. Hopefully you found it really informative and helpful. I will just signpost you to our website on the NSPCC learning page, which is that link that you can see here on the screen and that you will get sent to yourselves afterwards. On this website, this is where you can access all the things that you need to make that referral into building connections. So that request for service form, the consent templates that need to be sent to the young people if of a relevant age, and then the parents and carers as well. It can just be sent as a link through that website. And we've also got some leaflets that can be looked at from a young person's perspective, just so they're able to understand the service a little bit more and why they might have been referred in. We've got our team email address on the bottom as well, buildingconnections@nspcc.org.uk. So if you do think of any questions after you've left the session today, or you've got any queries or concerns about a young person that you're potentially thinking about referring in, please do feel free to email us on that email address there, and we would be more than happy to help. So from myself and Ellen, thank you very much for listening today. We do appreciate you coming along and learning a little bit more about our service. We do have some time now for questions, so we will stop sharing the screen now, and we'll have a look at the chat and if anyone's got any questions.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Ellen. That's great. There's a couple of questions already coming in, which is fantastic. So Janelle, who represents the 0 to 19 services, saying, you know, it's obviously an amazing and well needed service for young people. Presumably you're fine for this recording to be shared with the 5 to 19 workforce, which includes, you know, sort of the school nursing services. I guess it's to kind of raise that awareness, isn't it, that the service is there. And I guess a secondary question about what work you guys are kind of doing to raise awareness of, you know, in schools in Northumberland, of the service.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So yeah, as I said, now is kind of our official hard launch more recently, where we are reaching out to professionals who we do feel have young people that could benefit from the service. There is going to be a kind of big push, as you can imagine, in September as the schools do come back. But we're also really mindful of reaching young people that aren't in education. So, for example, like we said, school avoiders, school refusers, home educated young people, or that access other services. They might have other professionals that they work with that they're more comfortable opening up with, which is where we're reaching out to, for example, the health and social care sector a lot more. But yeah, we, like you mentioned, we're happy for this meeting to be shared. We're also happy to meet with any kind of professionals and teams where their team would benefit from learning a little bit more about building connections. So myself, Jess, our whole team, we're going along to these meetings sort of week in and week out, speaking to professionals, giving them a bit more opportunity to ask any questions about building connections. And then when referrals are kind of, you know, where they do see referrals that are fit, we're supporting them on that process of referring young people in as well.
Great. I've got a raised hand there from Kirsten. You can either pop something in the chat or I'll invite you to unmute yourself. I'll do that now. Sorry, it's not working at the moment.
Is that there? Yes, worked now?
Yes,
sorry,
that was me. I was a bit trigger happy with the mute unmute. Sorry,
no, I was frantically clicking away trying to make it work. Yeah, just a couple of things. One was a clarifying question, because I had a big fight with Zoom and I was like 3 minutes late, and I just wanted to make sure that I'd understood something. The conversations, are they web chat style typed conversations or video call, like verbal conversations? I just wanted to make sure I got that straight in my head.
No, that's okay. So they're typed, so a bit like an instant messaging, like a texting platform. We're in the works potentially far in the future to differentiate our offering, potentially expanding the age range up to 25. We know many young people going into university also equally feel loneliness as strong, but currently just a text-based service, which we do find, like we said, it's the young person's world. They're so used to doing most communication in that typed format there, but we do have accessibility support for young people that might struggle with that form of communication as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And that I'm really interested in. So I work for Stammer, and we're the national stammering charity. So we have a helpline and a web chat service. But what's interesting when we compare the just like web chat is like, there can be real magic that can happen in those conversations, but it takes quite a lot of skill to get open conversations going in writing, because you can't see or hear the emotional state of the other person, so it's harder to, you know, like to adjust. And I'd just be really interested to hear about how your teams manage that, because that's a complicated dance in a written conversation.
It is. It's that tone, isn't it, and how that can be translated.
Absolutely.
All of the befrienders, our volunteer befrienders, and as staff as well, we also run the sessions as well. It's a really rigorous training process where we do role play of the chats. We look at how different things could be interpreted. Even things simply as putting haha in a chat can come across really sarcastic compared to maybe if you're saying it verbally, and you can see those facial expressions. So that is something that as a team ongoing, we're evolving, and we reflect back through transcripts ourselves and be quite brutal and think, how could that come across as kind of a cold message? But we're really strong on using those affirmations and the reflections back to the young person. And that's why the first few sessions are so important, so we can learn the young person's style in typing, and really kind of adapt to that and see what they respond to better in the conversational style. Some young people really like to do paragraphs and kind of put everything down and type. Some young people are more reserved at the start, so we respect that and go at their own pace. And it's just about building that relationship on a professional, appropriate level, sharing a little bit about us so they realise we're human. We've had some young people question, are you a robot? Like, are you, like, right at the start, to just question who's on the other side of that screen. So those first few sessions are really important, but it's something we're super conscious about during the training with our volunteers to make sure we get that right from the start.
Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions? I just had a question, I guess, around kind of referral routes, because I know that obviously you guys are, you know, sort of fairly new, and at the moment it's kind of professional only. Is there some thoughts about making it so that parents can, you know, sort of refer in at some point potentially? I'm just thinking of parents who may not necessarily have a relationship with a professional, and how they might go about kind of getting that help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have had that feedback kind of that for some, and we do appreciate it could be a barrier. And the reason we do have it in place presently is for safeguarding reasons. So, for example, if a young person does make a disclosure, or there is a concern for a young person's well-being, we haven't physically obviously got eyes on them. We aren't there with that young person. So having a professional in whatever capacity in their life means that that professional can step in and support that young person, and we can work together to make sure that young person is safe. We want it to be any professional. So, as you'd imagine, a big referral pathway is through education, is through teaching, pastoral staff, things like that. But it can be, any professional. So, for example, some parent or carers might go to find out about this service and go to a professional that they feel comfortable with. That could be, that could be their GP, that could be a CAMS or SIPS or counsellor. It could be, you know, any professional or kind of youth worker. You know, it can be even like voluntary agencies. You know, we've had referrals from like Girl Guiding and Scouting and things like that. Just any professional kind of present in that young person's life in whatever capacity. Parent or carers can kind of seek out that path that way.
Great. Just to mention, obviously, Janelle's asked about email addresses. I know your general email address is on there, but are you guys happy for me to maybe link it up with Janelle, you know, sort of directly after this as well? Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. I know obviously the age range goes up to 19. Apologies if I missed it, but there wasn't a minimum age on there that I got. Is that just because it's a very kind of individualized, you know, sort of service to look at what you can kind of help with? Is that the
Exactly
case?
that, yeah. So our maximum age range, it is 19, but it's 18 at the time of referral. So they can turn 19 kind of whilst they're having that support, but it is 18 at the time of referral. Presently, no minimum age range, and that's really because it really down to that young person who could engage in the service and who could benefit. So I'm right in thinking, Jess, aren't I? 8 is our youngest kind of age we're seeing at the minute. A couple of kind of 8 and 9 year olds. We are really asking referrers to reflect and to think and, you know, communicate with us as well, what your thoughts are about how a young person would be able to engage in this service. So for particular young ones, they may be supported by a professional or a trusted adult there with them. So for example, that could be mum sat next to them, supporting them with the session, whether that's the kind of emotional support and that side of things, or it could be the actual kind of communication needs that are there. You know, for example, it's a typed service, so you know, some young people have just like a scribe or something like that, someone that's there typing for them. Obviously that is in the case of things like physical disabilities or learning difficulties and disabilities that limit the young person's ability to do that. But yeah, present no younger age range. We're definitely, you know, seeing referrals from that young age range as well. Particularly, I know 11 is a bit of a spike as they're going on to secondary school and things like that. But yeah, no younger age range at the minute.
Fabulous. That sounds great. I'm just waiting to see if any other questions are coming in, because I'm aware we've still got a little bit of time, so don't be shy. Do put anything in that you want to know. But if there's any questions that you kind of think of afterwards, then obviously the contact details are on the slides that are going to be sent out. And we're quite happy also to kind of put, you know, professionals in contact, you know, sort of directly. That's not a problem. Yeah, I guess I was thinking about like very much younger ones. You know, it would have to be really tailored, wouldn't it, in terms of, you know, and I guess that's part of your learning, isn't it? And like looking back over, you know, sort of how the web chat's communicated, because what's going to be good for, you know, a 15-year-old isn't going to be the same for, you know, sort of an 8-year-old. So yeah, I guess that's going to be a learning curve as you go along.
Is that language used, and that's a big thing that we talk about, the sessions we have with an 18-year-old, like you said, even the goals are on a completely different scale. An 18-year-old kind of going into that adulthood there and thinking about their future. The goals set there kind of are very different to kind of an 8-year-old that might be experiencing friendship situations, identity struggles there. So it's just about, like you said, we've got the practice model as our core, but adapting to the age that we are speaking to is something that we're really kind of putting at the forefront of our mind, and the language that's used as well, so they can access it, and to make sure that vocabulary literacy is really important throughout the sessions, and making sure we're using things that's accessible for them, and yeah, tailoring it to each young person.
That's great. Well, we'll certainly do our part to help, you know, sort of promote and, as I say, kind of put you in contact with, you know, other people that might be useful contacts. Anything that you do want sharing, you know, sort of social media wise, that's absolutely fine as well. I'm just going to see if there's any other comments coming in to the chat. I don't think so, which might mean that we can all get off and, you know, sort of have a slightly earlier finish. There's one new message at the end. Just some thank yous really, to say, you know, thanks for explaining it all so clearly. It sounds very good, sounds like a fantastic service. So lots of positivity there, which is absolutely fantastic. So I guess I'd like to thank Ellen and sort of Jess for coming along today and taking us through, and everybody else really for just coming along and taking the time out to sort of listen to the presentation today. It has been recorded, so it will be shared on our website, and I can also send it on to those people who've requested it, so they can in turn share on with their teams. So yeah, thank you everybody, and safe to say that just keep an eye out on our website for our future online sessions. I think next month is diabetes, but we have a program going into sort of next year. So thanks very much for coming along, everyone, and no doubt I will see you all very soon.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.